Hello my people and welcome back to Freedom Forest. And today on this sunny yet quite cold and brisk spring morning, it's the 30th of March, we're going to be planting out our new no-dig beds behind me here with our no-dig potatoes. So the general plan for these beds this year is that we're going to have our blue Hopi corn planted along the most northerly edge, which is actually where the camera is now. Behind me here, going up this gentle slope, is actually south. So the sun is coming like this over me throughout the day. So we want the tallest stuff along the back here because they grow to about 6 to 7, maybe even 8 foot, depending on how well they do. This ground we're on has taken a pummeling basically for many years when this was previously used as a market garden. And there was a lot of heavy tilling, and this area actually had rows of polytunnels on here, so the soil would often get really dried out because there was quite a few years where they weren't being used at all, and it was basically like dust, no organic matter in it whatsoever. Even weeds have struggled to grow here. So part of the regeneration of this area is that we've been bringing in over the last couple of weeks compost, laying it down on top here. And previous to that, I've forked over this area, which I don't normally do, but it was so compact. I thought in this case, it's got to be done because otherwise everything's just going to go down, hit that, and the roots are just going to go out horizontally, basically. Well, we've even got some snow coming down here now. Actually freezing today. We've had a week of complete bliss, like summer temperatures. I've even started to get a suntan, and then all of a sudden we've got the wind and the snow, and it's going to be -1 tonight apparently. Anyway, so I've got down some compost on here, and you may notice you can actually still see the soil coming through in places. Normally I would put very much thicker layer on than this, but because we have to earth up these potatoes, I'm trying to be as economical as possible because we have to buy this compost. In case you're new to our channel, we like to grow our potatoes as replant perennials, meaning basically in nature they would be perennial plants left to their own devices. Obviously we need to harvest them because the parts we want to eat and utilise are the underground parts of the plant. So when we harvest these, we harvest and then put one of the tubers straight back in the ground. Now in front of me here are 2 boxes, and we've actually made a decision this year to start fresh because we've got fresh beds with brand new seed potatoes. And the reason for that is I've been trialling all sorts of varieties. If you can see me, there's snow coming down everywhere over the last few years. And I've been planting quite obscure varieties I've found online, others I've bought from proper retailers, and others I've actually just planted supermarket varieties just to see what are going to do best. And during that period of time, we've had a few bouts of blight and viruses on some of our tubers. And if you're not aware, last year we actually tried the sarpo blight and virus resistant varieties, which we were very, very impressed with. And we've got a 2-part video series that I'll put up on the screen now for you in case you want to check those out. And because we were very impressed with those, we've decided to go with them again. Last year we planted the entire range. I think there's about 5, maybe 6 different varieties. This year we've gone for 4 of those, the sarpo range, the ones we like the most, as well as one of our old favourites, Pink Fir Apples. And the varieties we've gone for this year are the Blue Danube, which is a roasting potato. We've got the Sarpo Mira, which is a main crop potato, which is well known for being one of the most virus and blight resistant varieties. Also the Una, which is a secondarily multi-purpose potato, which is a great new potato, waxy, and if you leave it, it will also grow into kind of like a main crop variety as well. And finally, Kifley, which is an early main crop, which is also a waxy kind of new potato. If you're watching from outside the UK, when we say new potato, That's kind of like a salad potato. We've got military helicopters coming over as well now. You can see our potatoes are starting to sprout here, and this is because I've been a bit of a bad boy and left them in the cardboard box in dark. So really I should have kept these in the light somewhere, which would have stopped these growing out so long before planting, but it's still okay. I've just sorted our potatoes out into their varieties, and we actually have one more sarpo range actually called Exona, which we also did last year. And if you're wondering at this stage or would like to know what they taste like, we also did a harvest and taste test video of all these varieties last year that I'll put on the screen now as well. Right, I'm going to go around now and start spacing these out. So normally in our already established no-dig beds, I would just literally place our potatoes on top of our compost mulch and then come along and put some more compost mulch and then wood chips on top of that. Because this bed, as I mentioned earlier, is only a tiny little bit of compost on here already, literally less than a centimetre, I'm actually disturbing our topsoil here to plant these. I'm just kind of loosening it up a bit and sitting the potato in. And the reason for that is partly to do with time. I would love to have had enough time to come along and already put a really thick mulch on here already, but I haven't had time to do that with everything else we're doing. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to plant these in now, put a bit of mulch around each one, kind of do a primary small earthing up, and then as they start to emerge throughout spring, I'll continue coming in and putting more mulch around these. So by the time mid-season is here, this bed will have effectively become a full no-dig bed. It just allows me the time to do it in succession while I've got other jobs that I need to be getting on with. There's also been quite a few weeds that I've still been pulling out as I've been working my way through. And I'm under no illusions that this is going to be weed free this year, but I'm planting the potatoes fairly close together, about a foot apart, so their foliage will hopefully shade out a lot of the regrowth we do have. So our 3 little sacks of sarpo Mira main crop potatoes have filled up this first section here. I've just put a few bits of wood down there to delineate between the 2 varieties, and I'm thinking I might actually grow some yacon in between as well. It's not too late to get those in yet, so yeah, I think that could be a good idea just to distinguish between them as the season goes on. Oh, sure is windy today though. Snow one minute, rain the next, warm sun the next. I just got excited then. I've been looking for treasure here for years and I came across a coin, but unfortunately it's some kind of plastic one from a game. One day though, you never know. The long-term plan for these beds here are to be permanent perennial potato beds. So we just do our harvesting at the same time as harvesting, put one straight back. So harvesting and planting are done at exactly the same time. And that's why I haven't really mentioned chitting these, the process of going around and maybe removing a few of these shoots, so you've only got maybe 3 or 4 of them, because basically up until now we just plant them straight back like I just said, so they just come through how they want and it's absolutely fine. So I'm not really wasting any time with that kind of thing. I haven't really noticed any difference anyway. So yeah, that's that. And really these beds this year are a bit of an investment for us, because we're still actually going to be planting back the seed potatoes we've continued storing from last year, but way over in a different area, completely separate to these. So they haven't got really a chance of transmitting kind of virus or anything like that to these potatoes. And the majority of these are actually going to be our seed again for next year, because they're quite expensive to buy. So we want to basically make a seed bed here. As you can see, I'm still pulling out big old bramble roots here, and I know from experience it's just worth trying to get these, the worst of it anyway, because they'll just be straight back through. And even those small little kind of feeler shoots, they have the ability to shoot back. That will still be left in the ground after I remove this, but still the best I can get out now the better. And yeah, we'll never be digging this bed again like this, so our soil will remain undisturbed. So once I've got our potatoes in, I'm literally just pulling a bit of this surface topsoil with a bit of compost around, and then chucking down there a few handfuls of compost, and then we'll wait for these to grow through, and then I'll add a bit more around there again as they start to shoot. And I always like to take time when I'm dealing with these crops, which are very sacred crops. It's easy to think, oh, just spuds or potatoes, but these are very important crops that have been developed and raised over hundreds, if not thousands of years by Native Americans, particularly South America in this case, grown all over the Andes area. And yeah, it's very easy to take for granted that many of the crops that we rely on for our survival now have come from these people. So I always like to be mindful and give thanks. Well guys, believe it or not, it's actually the next day now. The weather deteriorated quite badly yesterday, and these snowstorms just kept coming in and ended up absolutely freezing and a bit wet. So I decided to call it a day. And something else you guys might have been wondering is, if you've got early and main crop varieties here, second earlies and all that, why are you planting them all at the same time? Because you would normally kind of stagger the planting a bit. But again, as I said, because we're treating these as perennials, after this year, they're all in the ground at the same time when we plant them back, so it doesn't really matter, they'll just come up when they're ready. Yeah, so there's just so many things over the last few years. I've just been learning about how throughout all walks of life and different topics, how we're told all of this stuff, how things should be done. And a lot of the time there's just no rhyme or reason to it really. I don't mean just in the kind of topic of potatoes, but so many different areas of life where these kind of things are propagated, how it has to be done, and people get so defensive about it. You know, something I wondered before is, what is the difference between seed potatoes and just potatoes you buy in the supermarket or the ones you've grown yourself? And I was really trying to search online, and it's quite hard to find genuine info out there because it's normally just a company selling seed potatoes. And it wasn't until I was speaking to one of my neighbours here who, for a lot of his youth, worked on potato farms. And this bit of land actually used to be used for potatoes. In fact, we found an old-fashioned machine in the bushes actually. I'll get a shot of that in a minute. And he was telling me that back then they'd do their harvesting and then they would grade out the potatoes for different things. So the very small ones, or just ones that maybe had, you know, bites in them or whatever, would go for potato feed. The kind of medium-sized ones, kind of egg-shaped, would go for seed potatoes, and the bigger ones for kind of jacket potatoes. And yeah, it makes sense really, doesn't it, when you're thinking about, you're basically propagating these, they're basically clones, vegetative clones of a plant, because you're taking, it's like taking a cutting of a plant or taking one of the underground rhizomes or tubers and the genetic material is identical from the parent plant because it is part of the parent plant. So I know back in the day I found one reference to this, and it was hard to find, that about every 7 or 8 years of replanting your own tubers, one source I found said that yield started to go down. So then they would grow, basically get the seed, the true seed from the plant, so grow out just a variety, and then basically allow those to pollinate each other or hand pollinate them, and at the top you get basically small tomato-like fruits, and in there would be the true actual seed of the plant. Of course, seed potatoes aren't actually seeds, they're just tubers from a plant that's been harvested. So I found that interesting. I mean, I can't talk from my own experience at this time in terms of does the yield lower over time. I find it hard to believe it would if these didn't have any kind of disease in them or virus that's passing on each year, because they should be genetically identical to the parent plant, and there's no new genetics coming in because these aren't being pollinated like you would collect seeds from a squash or something and grow it on the next year. So there's no reason why, unless they're kind of contaminated with virus or blight, which is being passed on year after year, that you shouldn't be able to pretty much just keep going indefinitely. Although I'm just planting potatoes, we are trying to promote a way of doing it differently, which is not degrading the soil over time. I know today you've seen me doing some digging in here, but it's just really important to make clear this is a one-off thing, because when we're putting mulch down here to feed the plants, we're not actually feeding the plants, we're feeding the soil, which in turn the plants can feed from basically the waste products of all those thousands and millions of microorganisms in the soil. And that's what it's all about, because this land here was highly degraded with just a few years of using some of these more modern methods. So we can reverse that really quickly. And yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of big or large or small scale people are doing it on. Oh, it's just a complete pleasure to be outdoors today, friends, doing this. Absolutely beautiful. I love it, absolutely love it. And it's a pleasure as well to have you with us, or with me today. It's nice to know you're here. And yeah, it's always much appreciated you watching what we do here. And also, just, you know, we have a lot of people saying, oh, I just would so wish to do what you're doing. And no, it really is possible. It really is possible. You've just got to get yourself out there and just really focus on what you want. Just really, really focus and make a plan. And there's always ways, there's just 1,000,001 ways that you can go about doing the same thing. I mean, before I found Freedom Forest here, just through doing my gardening work, I was going to all of these elderly people doing their gardening, and you know, they don't need the garden, they're not using it, it's a cost to them, and you know, they're paying me to do it, and they're also just completely lonely. And you know, just if you've got local elderly people, maybe in a house by themselves, who've got a nice sized garden or even a small garden, it's amazing what you can grow in a small place. And I'm sure most would be really happy just to let you use it in exchange for mowing the front grass and stuff as well. I mean, that's just one way, even if you're in the process of making plans, other bigger plans, and you just want to ultimately find your own piece of land. And yeah, just got to try and think out the box really, I would say, because yeah, trying to just look through kind of estate agents or something, it's, yeah, prices are going to be pretty mad doing it that way. And I think someone possibly growing on a larger scale than this, using machinery, fertilisers, pesticides, fungicides will probably say, well, that's all nice, you're growing it on a small scale like that, but look how labour intensive it is. I can do 3 acres in the time that it's taken you to do that. But really, with that system, what's not being taken into account is the subsidies on the diesel they're using, the soil that's being washed away every year, just the impact on the environment of the fungicides, the pesticides, the herbicides. I mean, when you take into account all of those impacts, is it really better? So I mean, if we can eventually get to a stage where we're not only feeding ourselves, but a nice group of the local community as well, if a lot more people start doing that and we're improving the land each year as well, that's got to have merit. Well friends, that's these beds planted up for this year. I'm also really interested to hear from you guys what potato varieties you've chosen to grow, and if you found any particular varieties in the past to be virus or blight resistant as well, that have also tasted nice. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and we do hope you're subscribed. If you're not already, please do, and look forward to seeing you again and having you on board following our journey. Lots of love and peace and plants.